Coming at you live from the depths of the Hive. We are back, and it's Saturday morning.
Well, that was a first. I delayed coming back onto the stream for a sneeze, because I didn't want to the immediately pop onto the microphone sneezing, and I had one of those sneezes that was taking a really long time to come out. So I'm sitting here off screen, and it's funny because what's the point in not doing it on screen if I'm just going to tell you about it, right? But it was just like hung in there, and I thought I was going to lose it, which is the worst thing ever. You never want to lose a sneeze because then you got whatever particulates that are in there irritating you just still up in there doing whatever they were doing to make your body want to reject them in the first place, which is problematic. Anyway, good morning. We are live from the Hive. Hello to the beautiful swarm out there in the side chat. Very active with the BugBot. BugBot is not running at full capacity this morning, just to give everybody a heads up. Good morning, Wild Eden. I don't get to see you too much in my side chat. Great to have you on board. We're in for quite the ride today. We are going full tilt woo today. And I'm just going to tell you right now, we are starting. Well, no, I won't tell you right now because I got things to go over first. But just stick in there because we got, oh boy, we got some things to go over. But I'm glad to see everybody is here and happy. And it looks like, according to Cosmic Kyle, there's a beautiful weather today. Godless Granny popped in just to say hi. I think she may still be listening. Kelly, if you're still listening, I hope you have a great day. She was getting ready to head out, and we had Ring popping in second. Yes, good to see you, Ring, rolling that initiative. Cosmic Kyle, of course, expressing the beauty of the day in his neck of the woods. And Cosmic Kyle has made a new channel logo for a channel spanner, whatever you want to call it, for their channel that looks fantastic with the planets and stuff, all done, I believe, in their own art. So I might be hitting you up for something like that, Kyle. Looks good. BugBot seemed to be glitchy a little bit this morning too, double posting, but that's okay. Good morning, Greg and Sandy and Scott. Oh goodness, we got a lively crowd today. Dr. Mordecai, yeah, happy to see everybody. Poops McGee, happy you were able to make a live one as well. It's always good to see new faces in the live chat, because then I get to interact with you and you get to respond to the things that we're talking about. So it's always a good time. Couple of things I did want to go over. I do want to, we're changing the way we do Bug of the Week. I don't like the format with just that little wedge just stuck in there. With it's the time frame. It's nothing about the topic that we cover. It's more about the time frame that it takes. And I guess it is about what we cover a little bit, because I'd like to be able to do a little more of a concise thing. I would like to, I think I'm going to start doing a weekly short for Bug of the Week. I don't know if I'm going to do it live. I haven't decided yet, but it'll be more like in a TikTok, YouTube shorts. I whistled when I said that. I don't know. I sounded like Nephilim Free for a second there. YouTube shorts, that sort of thing. It's going to have that format with the, I'm going to try for it. I haven't done anything like that, and anything I've tried to do on like TikTok has been pretty unsuccessful. But we're going to attempt to go in this direction. I'm going to switch Bug of the Week to being on that format. So it won't be part of the Live from the Hive anymore, but the good thing about that is it'll give me a chance I can do a whole slew of them together and format them the same, and then just schedule them for releases so that they come out in an orderly fashion, and we can get a good rotation going on when we're adding to the Venom list, when we're adding to the, to the Cute list and things like that, just because it makes it easier, I think, at least for me and maybe for the consuming audience, because I haven't even been putting those Bugs of the Week videos up because I've been compiling them because they're short. They're all between, there's been some log Bugs of the Week that go on 15, 20 minutes or so, but most of them are under 10 minutes or just right around 10 minutes. So it's pretty easy to just lay them all out together if I ever take the time to do it. But it's, it's never going to be complete. I do have like season 1. I did have season 1. I guess that's lost. I have to go back and clip all that back out again. That's unfortunate. Yeah, and that just now dawned on me. So y'all are watching me realize that live on camera. All right, so that's the plan for Bug of the Week. We are changing the channel name. I don't know how widespread that message has gotten, but we are changing the channel name because I'm going to tell this probably every Saturday morning for the next couple weeks, just real quick. Brain comes from Brian, which was my dead name. I went by Brian. People would always mix up my I and A when they put my name on papers and in text and stuff, even at work. So it became a joke, that Brain. But I know a lot about bugs, so Brain Bug. That is how that name came about originally, and that's why I went with that name. So now, kind of trying to get away from that name for obvious reasons. I mean, do I look like a Brian? So I'm switching the name. We have polls out all over the place. The final poll, let me see, I have these dates here. The final poll will be, or the final polling will be the 28th. That's when we're going to poll the final number. So everybody can still vote. You vote on YouTube. You vote on Twitter. You vote on if you're in the Facebook group, you can vote in there. There's an additional vote. If you're my patron, if you're part of the swarm, you get 2 votes for every vote that you put in. So your vote counts double. And so you can go, if you're a patron, you can go and vote on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon, and have like 8 votes, 7 votes, just for you. So you do have an impact, especially my patrons, because I want your voices to matter the most. Right now, Hive Science is in a steady lead with more, I'm going to be straight with everybody, more than twice the amount of votes of anything else. So Hive Science is looking like it's going to be the channel name, which I love because I already got a segment named Hive Science. I already got art with Hive Science on it. And I've been working on more art with Hive Science on because I'm that confident about it winning. I have been toying with art for other things too. But, Amy Newman, good to see you. Oh, never. Yeah. Oh, yeah, there you are. Okay, I was like, never mind, that's just popping up in there. But yes, it's good to see you. Anyhow, so that's the voting power you have as a patron. You still have up to 4 platforms to vote on for everybody else, though. And yeah, it was 6, not 7. But yeah, you will. Of course, you can always, have a sock account and vote too, and you can have infinite votes. But I'm not gonna recommend that. But it's something you could do if you really wanted to. So anyway, Hive Science is in the win, and I'm gonna take a quick drink because my throat's getting a little rough. Hope that wasn't too long of a pause. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, okay, so that was about the voting. So that's going to happen. And then the channel's official name, the name of the channel is actually going to start. I'm going to change it on June 1st, or try to get it changed on June 1st. But the first live from the Hive that's going to be with the new channel name will be the 4th of June. And I'm going to do I'm going to celebrate it because it's just, what are we going to call it? My channel's transition, if you will. My channel going from being Brian's channel to being Bree's channel. Because right now I've just been Bree running Brian's channel, and it's really weird. But the content's not going to change. I'm still going to do, my segments are going to be CryptoCorner, or Cryptic Corner. I keep still say CryptoCorner, but Cryptic Corner. You know, it took me a long time to get from saying Cryptid Corner to saying CryptoCorner. And now I can't stop saying CryptoCorner. But maybe crypto is going to, the crypto issue is going to go away because cryptocurrency is... Anyway, we're still going to do Creation Watch, Cryptid Corner. We are still going to do a Hive Science segment. I might change the name of Hive Science segment if I change the name of the channel to Hive Science, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. We'll have a whole week to figure that out. But yeah, everything's still being the same. And then Bug of the Week is going to switch formats like what we talked about a minute ago. And other than that, I think we are all caught up on channel updates. Any new bugs? No. It is bug season. We will see backyard safaris again. Those will probably also likely be in that TikTok style format. So, but keep your eye out for those. I'll also share them on, like, if they're short enough, I'll share them on Twitter, things like that. So, yes, it should be a fun time. Is that the Doom Bunny that popped in here too? Good morning. What a great crowd I have this morning. So many people that I don't always get to see in the live chat. So I'm so glad everybody's here. So glad you all managed to come in here. So we're going to pop into Cryptic Corner because Cryptic Corner is a little something different for us today. And like I said, we're going to get deep into the woods on this stuff. And it doesn't get much deeper into the woods than covering something like the lost city of Atlantis. Usually we talk about ghosts and goblins. Not really. We did talk about the Kelly Hopkinsville goblins. That's goblins. We talk about ghosts a lot. We talk about Bigfoot and UFOs, and we've done possession or exorcisms with the real exorcist. But we have not really talked too much about a place. And there's no place that, well, there's maybe one place that has a more relation to a cryptic place than this one, but we will eventually get to that sucker. But for right now, we're just gonna work with what we have, and we're gonna talk about the lost city of Atlantis for the first time ever. The other place, of course, is going to be the Bermuda Triangle, which is also linked to the lost city of Atlantis. So you could call it a correlation there, but today we're just going to focus on Atlantis itself because I fell down a rabbit hole. I was looking for stuff to cover on Atlantis, actually, because I wanted to cover it because I think the topic is interesting. But I was having a hard time finding a video that's short enough because when we do these Cryptic Corner sessions, there's two ways I go about it. I'll either do one video that's, less than 20 minutes, or I can do a two-parter for anything over that. But everything was over that, and I didn't want to do a two-parter on Atlantis, at least not yet. If I do a two-parter on Atlantis, I will probably do it for the Paranormal Scholar, because she has a good video about that, and making lots of a lot of claims about what geologists and scientists in the academic community is up to. She has a lot of conspiratorial ideas. I don't know if any of you all watched the Paranormal Scholar. She's I think she's Scottish. I don't know for sure if she's Scottish. I think she's Scottish because she does the ad for the Scottish land where you can become a lord or lady on her channel. So I think she's Scottish. I feel terrible about not being able to identify her accent, but be like a racist person saying they don't see color. I don't hear accents, but she's from somewhere in the UK. Anyway, and she does videos on paranormal stuff. And she's usually just a narrator. I don't think she's ever presenting her own opinions for the most part. As I say, I don't think she's ever. No, she does present her own opinions, at least in her Atlantis video, which I watched last weekend while I was mowing, or listened to, I should say. And I would like to tackle that sometime in a two-parter, but we're gonna deal with somebody completely different today. We are going to be talking about Dr. Luigi Usai, I think is how you say that last name. And correct me if I'm wrong. It should be. I think it's Usai, because that's Sai like the ninjutsu weapon or whatever, the Ninja Turtle weapon, a Sai. So Dr. Luigi Sai. I don't know. I did try to look this gentleman up and learn a little bit about him. He does admit he's an amateur. We'll get into that in a minute. But first, let's look at what he has to say. Atlantis is in the Sardo Corso Grabenhorst underwater continental block, submerged by the meltwater pulses and destroyed by a subduction zone. Capital is Solstice. Then just keep in mind too that to bring this gentleman to you, I am translating from Italian. Most of the websites that information from this guy is on is in Italian. His book that he wrote is in Italian, so I'm translating it. But he has been popping up on the radar in the unexplained mysteries communities with his claims about Atlantis, and of course specifically in the Atlantis communities and sub-communities within that community. He's been making waves. He does actually interact with the community though, and we will see that in a moment. But let's move on and see what the gentleman has to say. He's and just to be completely clear, this guy admits that he's built his theory on where Atlantis is, what Atlantis is, and what happened to Atlantis, all on 20 days of extensive research. 20 days of extensive research. 20 days, not years, not months. No, 20 days. Less than a month of research. So we are, I spend about that much time, generally speaking, on each and every topic on CryptoCorner. Obviously, I've spent years of my life researching these topics. Spent years of my life. I've been reading every book I could get my paws on cryptic stuff since 1988. When I was about, I was about 6. No, 88. I was, since about 1988, 89, when my parents started letting me read that kind of stuff, or I started wanting to read that kind of stuff. So I've been doing this for a long time, but each and every topic I spend at least 20 days. I know I decide these week to week, but I start like poking around at a topic well before that. There's I got like a hurry up and wait job, so I got like downtime between crises sometimes where I can listen to a little bit of this or that about a topic, pull papers or whatever I need to do. But 20 days of research, I can tell you from my personal position that it's hard. That's enough to research one video or one or one topic, maybe one report, thoroughly enough to feel like you're presenting a educated case on the matter. However, something as complex and overarching as Atlantis is, because when it comes to Atlantis, you got links to Hellenistic culture. You have the origins of Hellenistic culture, the origins of Egyptian culture, Mayan culture. You got links to things, like the Bermuda Triangle, what they call the people of the sun, the North America, the mound builders. What's the the proper name that we use for them now, I can't remember. The people of the sun in North America that built the mountain pyramids and stuff. Got connections to them. They've got connections to, of course, the Canary Islands and the Azores, Bermuda. They've got connections to St. Helena Island, anything on the mid-Atlantic ridge, all the way down to Antarctica and up into Greenland and Iceland area. This whole area has links to Atlantean folklore and mythology. You have to take into consideration, and then of course all of the Mediterranean, Europe, and so many cultures that are associated with this group and claim to have been part of it, and so many lands and islands and countries have claimed that their land is actually what was once Atlantis, or part of what was Atlantis. And this is going to be no different here. What we're looking at. Lots of evidence of the existence of Atlantis. Capital Solstice, as what I'm going to say. Well, this is Greek, so would that be Sulcus? Atlantis is the Sardo Corso submerged block. Is he just going to claim it, or that's the second time he's... Maybe I'm just going through this wrong, but Atlantis is the Sardinian Corsican graben horse submerged by meltwater pulses and destroyed by the Mediterranean subduction zone, which passes exactly under the Solstice Atlantidine capital. Under the seabed, the same that made the Vesuvius volcanic, I think it's supposed to be volcanic eruption, or volcano erupt, destroyed both Pompeii and Herculaneum. Right. So we are in the Mediterranean with this fella. He is not left, with his theory, he has not left behind the Pillars of Hercules, which, if anybody's familiar with Atlantis lore, if anybody's familiar with the origin story of the very first mentions of Atlantis and where this mythology comes from, this being on the eastern side of the Pillars of Hercules is a bit of a problem. I mean, you could almost dismiss this theory that what we're describing here is Atlantis. Not saying it couldn't be something, but that it being Atlantis, not beyond the Pillars of Hercules. All right. Ian Davenport, D Parks. Good morning. Good morning. We are going to Atlantis, so I hope you brought your scuba gear. Yeah, I agree, Ring, about the Minoan civilization. I think it was that was an inspiration for. I think that maybe Pompeii as well, Herculaneum, anything that was destroyed by the gods, which would be natural forces throughout history, could have contributed to the story behind this. Under the Mediterranean Sea, there's a very dangerous subduction zone where Africa goes under Europe. I didn't think that Africa would be a bottom, but that's fine. The subduction zone goes from Gibraltar to the Solstice to Naples in Italy, and it's the same which caused the eruption of Vesuvius, which destroyed both I think it's supposed to be Herculaneum again. I'm not sure about what's going on with the typos here. I'm not going to blame the author, because I think this is the translator running this through too. But in Pompeii, so if things get weird, I'm not gonna come down on our friend here who is making this blog. I'm going to blame the translator, and blame my own Bree brain. All right, until now, geologists didn't have a good reason to study the subduction zone under Sardinia. But I think now they have, because it was probably a tectonic seismic event which caused the destruction of the outer rings of Atlantis capital. All right, so I don't think there's ever been a situation where we'd say a scientist does not have reason to study a subduction zone. Now, especially a subduction zone that is nested right underneath the population, some of the, or very close to the population centers of much of Western Europe. Adjacent, I mean, an earthquake in that subduction zone can cause terrible damage all across Southern Europe, all across these resort locations and things like that. People that make are cities that make their money doing tourism and stuff. They make a lot of money doing tourism. They could wreck those economies with a nice heavy earthquake. Africa is also splitting in two. Yep, the African Rift Valley. That is Africa splitting right in two. Another fun fact about Africa, Madagascar there off of the east coast of Africa, not part of the African continent at all. Like the piece of land was never attached to Africa. It's never been part of the African plate. It was actually long time ago attached to India. And I guess the rest of Gondwanaland by extension. Just a little tidbit of knowledge about that. There is also a Pacific version of Atlantis called Mu. Mu is similar in its history and structure, but then again, there's also Rahili, which is from the Cthulhu mythos, which is either in the Pacific or Indian Ocean, which is also very similar in its depiction and fiction to Atlantis. Not necessarily in its depiction in real life, though. Or not real life, but in the books compared to what Atlantis was supposed to be like. Because Atlantis is not some underwater oasis where there's a magical kingdom or whatever like you see in the Disney cartoons. It was supposed to be a lost civilization that was destroyed and everybody died. All right. We are going to watch. Y'all want to watch this? I don't think it's too long. I don't think there's any sound to it either. Okay, we're zooming out from, I believe, Sardinia. Oh, hold on, let me switch. I got a full screen thing here too. We'll rewatch it. All right, there we are. Now we're going to rewatch this. Okay, so pulling right out here. All right, let's pause some of these. Oh, stupid pop-up thing. I guess I can close it. Okay, so this is the Mediterranean. Guys, here's like Sicily. Africa, you got Tunisia, Algeria. This is in Portuguese, but I think we can pretty much get an idea what we're dealing with here. And here is Sardinia. Now, when we think of Sardinia, you might probably think of beaches and tourist kind of like Mediterranean cruise is probably the main thing I think of when I think of Sardinia. But they're talking about this subduction zone right under here. Pompeii is up in here, which, yeah, it's kind of weird that they said this isn't a subduction zone that's studied much because Pompeii is on the subduction zone. But I digress. There's a subduction zone under Atlantis, Tarsus, Teddy, the same which caused the destruction of, yeah, that's the same thing it said there. Like he's going on and on about that, the subduction zone. Which I agree it's there. Subduction zone across the Mediterranean, yep, sure. Boom, okay. You're not making a believer out of me, Luigi. I don't understand what this is. Is that the whole of your argument? Is that there's a subduction zone under the Mediterranean? Yeah, it doesn't have any sound. I don't know why. but this giving you a better idea where the location he's talking about is, though. So you saw the Italian peninsula there in mainland Europe. Now we're going back overhead. The title of this video is Atlantis has finally been found. I don't think he's found anything. What's he found? Just that there's a subduction zone. Nothing less and nothing more. So... All right, moving on. San Antoco, I guess, and Carlo Fort are not just simple islands, but they are what remains of the outer Atlantis capital ring. The capital rings. I don't know if you've ever seen a map of Atlantis. Maybe we have one I can pull up, but maybe there's one down below. Capital rings. This is simply amazing. Plato says the Atlantis was ancient for the ancients. It was all real. We just couldn't see anything. The word solstice in Latin language, location ablative, derived from sulcus, sulci or sulco, which in Latin language means the furrow. The concentric furrows delimit the Atlantis capital, which is today named as Solstice in Sardinia, or Sulcus in Sardinia. So we're going by argument by etymology about the origin of the word, but do you think that that's why they named it that? Because the subduction zone? I don't know. All right. And we have true evidence. This is true evidence, Hive, so keep that in mind, of the sinking of Atlantis. In fact, the Tertullius, they continue to find unknown submerged finds, among which the, Nerga Butupa recently emerged from the Monte Prenu Reservoir. The Rio Palmas is what remains of the river that led to the city center. The Egyptians have engraved on at least one stele that the civilization of Atlantis was ancient for the ancients. We have confirmed this too. In fact, a fossil fragment of Arthropod armata, the prehistoric giant millipede, was recently found in Rio Palmas. And this confirms why Plato said it was ancient for the ancients. Probably they had already found many fossils, which at the moment we still don't know what use the Sulcus Inglesitini used, if they showed them as a trophy to visitors or if they destroyed them. So a couple of things I want to say here. First, I've changed the way that I'm pronouncing this sulcus because after reading the root words that they're saying, that the author here is saying, I'm going to go with a hard C on that because it looks like that's what the rest of the words we're using. And as far as Arthropod armata, ancient for the ancients indeed, but almost half a billion years, too early for people, my friend. Half a billion years is a long time ago, and these land masses were not, especially the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean was not really a thing in the Paleozoic. The area that would become the Mediterranean was, but the landmass that constitutes most of Europe now was home to Arthropod. It was also, I believe, it was stretched north to south from the equator to the North Pole, and it was heavy with what we call now coal forest, which left behind coal for mankind to use in their industrial revolution, but among the remains was also a great number of giant arthropods, including the giant millipede Arthropleura. Now, this, again, was 500 million years before humans even evolved. So to say that Atlantis was around when Arthropleura was crawling around, it's a weird hill to die on. All right, moving on. I think that's about it for our guy here. We're going to look at some more of the pictures. This is basically the same stuff that he showed in his little video there, though, but we have some artifacts that I wanted to see. Sumerian history. Atlantis would be the Sardinian Corsican block submerged by the succession of the various meltwater pulses, the melting of ice after last glaciation, called Worm. The capital would have its center on a hill near the small town of Santata in the province of Cagliari. Starting from the hill next to Santata, it's possible to see the perfectly circular development of all the town's plantings. I'll X'd out on that. Do I have X'd out still? I think I saved that. I did! Woo! I love that I still have that. I've lost so much. Having just that little piece of art that I made survive is great. All right. There are also many toponymic references to the myth of Atlantis, including the two hot and cold water sources placed by Poseidon, the cold water source of Xenagas, which still remains today, also in the name of Castello di Acquafredda di Sequila, the cold water castle. And that was an attempt, so bear with me. And the hot water source present in the toponymy in 3 neighbors next to the small town of Nuxus with a lowercase n. Does the town not start with a capital letter? That's a proper noun, I would say. Still called Aquacata, hot water. I'm not going to read the translation on that one because I didn't like the way the first one sounded. But upper hot water and down hot water, which are small villages next to Santata. Is this an ad or are we talking about more?
Aperti al pubblico nella grotta di acqua calda a Nugisodo.
We're not going to be able to translate that. That's all right. We'll move right along. Sorry. Also present in the toponymy, adjacent to the small village of Santata, or Santati, is the name Sais, the name of an urban fraction called Lower Sais and another called Upper Sais. Sais is, in fact, the same name of the Egyptian city where the priest Sanchis taught the famous Greek politician Solon the story of Atlantis, according to Plato's account. Incredible archaeological discoveries have also been made in the caves near Santati. In the Benedzu cave, extraordinary finds have been made of the finds still under study. The finds were finds, and they're still under study. Archaeological excavations at the Su Mondesdedu cave, located in the urban hamlet of Aquacata, have revealed human settlements very remote over time. The necropolis of Montisu, near Santati, has Egyptian and Atlantean symbols. The Atlantean concentric circles are the symbol of the capital of Atlantis. built according to concentric circles. Concentric circles are built according to concentric circles. That was the sentence I just read with a little bit more filler in there. Weird. But that's also, like saying the finds, like that. Extraordinary finds have been made of finds still under study. Oh my gosh. How did somebody write that out and not say this? I can say again, blaming the translator, but what does that translate to then? What did it mistranslate? All right. The circles are carved into the rock, visible and famous on the wall of the necropolis. There are also sculpted drawings of the ships in use at the time by the Egyptians. It would be further proof of the connection between the necropolis of Montessu and Sentati and ancient Egypt. Furthermore, the trident of Poseidon, who, according to legend, founded the capital of Atlantis, were found carved in the rock in the village of Lacani. The trident carved in the rock are still visible at the Menhir Museum in Laconi in the province of Calgary. All right, so we have a lot of inferences here about the hot and cold springs on this island, which does, to me, that doesn't seem like something that's like too out there, but it is what it is. But yeah. Anyway, this is getting kind of boring to me, so he's just making inferences and drawing correlations. He's not presented any evidence. I would like to see these artifacts he's talking about. Pictures of it, because a concentric circle, which is, all fine and dandy, but it's not culturally specific. Here we go. It's not culturally specific, and he's going to make that correlation that because all these cultures have it, they were all linked to ancient Atlantis, but really drawing circles within circles. I mean, come on now. And they're even presenting, look, circles within circles on their eyes. Your eyes are circles within circles. You have your pupil and your iris and then your sclera. So yeah, you have circles within circles. It's a pretty simple shape and design. And to try to link it, say that all these cultures are linked because of this, is just silly. Anyway, yeah, that was Cryptic Corner. I actually did have more laid out, but that took up too much time. Actually, you know what? Let's watch this real quick because this is just something fun. Let me There we go. All right. Alright, so mysterious yellow brick road found at the bottom of the Pacific and dubbed the path to Atlantis. So this is on the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, but it's pretty cool. Kind of reminds me of the Bimini Road. It's only about a minute or 2.5 minutes long, but we probably won't watch all of it. I'm not going to watch through. I'm not going to turn on the sound because I don't know if the music they're playing is copyrighted or anything, but we're going to look at the images. So they found basically this, it's pyroclastic rock, but the way that it's eroded and kind of cracked looks really cool. And looks like a brick road, like it says here, well-preserved brick road at the bottom of the sea on April 29th. Yeah. But it is cool looking. Kind of, it runs through this little, so there's volcanic activity up here in ancient times. So you have pyroclastic flows that, laid at the bottom of the sea and slowly broke down to this cool brick-looking pattern. Neat stuff. Well, hey, Secular Rarity. Good to see ya. But yeah, it's not actually a brick road. The way that this particular formation of rock breaks down kind of reminds me like how the Giant's Causeway in Ireland, things like that, where natural structures look artificial because of their symmetry. Yeah, but I just thought this would be a palate cleanser from Luigi that we just dealt with, and I was not thrilled with his content. I probably will not be revisiting him. It was kind of boring and just a lot of bold assertions. Oh, I did mention something about wanting to show him engaging too. So, hold on, we're gonna do that real quick too. Let's clean that out. Okay. But that's what that road looks like. Okay, so first of all, this is his book. We're going to switch it to English so you all can understand it. Atlantic, yeah, the pulse water after the last ice age. Basically the same thing that he's talking about on his website. So I don't see any reason to buy the book. Plus, it's out of print. So there's that. But someone made come on this Atlantis Online blog and made a criticism of Luigi's theories. Yeah. And yeah, we made some definite criticisms that I agree with. And one that I picked up on, of course, was being outside the Pillars of Hercules, which is, beyond the Cape of Gibraltar. But Luigi actually showed up and responded to it. So kudos to him for engaging with the criticisms that he's getting. He makes some genetic claims here, which get a little borderline racist. I'm not going to read that conversation. Just claiming that certain people groups have this weird Atlantean DNA. I'm not like yeah, like this stuff right here. I'll highlight it, but I'm not going to say it out loud because it's kind of cringy. I know it's weird to say that, but if it was any other culture besides Mediterranean cultures, and I said that they're related to some supernatural or unnatural race that some separate race from the rest of humanity, it would be gross. And it's gross this way too, to make that claim. These people have a proud, they call the Gaunches, they have a proud history in their own mythology. Oh, thank you, Cosmic Kyle. You're so sweet. I'll have to check it out after the stream. We need to be wrapping up Cryptic Corner though, because it's gone over a little bit. I mean, that's okay. I got excited about the topic, but I'm trying to keep things trimmed down. Of course, it's just me and Grayson here, so and he's busy on the Xbox, so I have all the time that I want to do the show. But I know I like to keep it. Y'all know I like to keep it under 2 hours if I can help it. But yeah, and they make the same arguments for the Pillars of Hercules and stuff, but the genetic stuff was what I found really weird and kind of interesting. Anyhow, we are going to close out Cryptic Corner with that in mind. I hope that was enjoyable. I hope you, well, I don't think anybody learned anything about Atlantis at all on this, besides that people can draw inferences from just about anything to attempt to make a case that this place is Atlantis, that place is Atlantis. Are they convincing? No. And there's also been some pyramids found off the Azores, allegedly, like in 2014, and nothing ever really came of it. We may visit that in the future. Because, yeah, summer months make me want to think about Atlantis. So we may visit Atlantis, we may visit Mu. We may visit some other lost civilization, the lost city of Z, for instance, in the Amazon. We could visit that. Bermuda Triangle is another one that was mentioned. There's some other triangles out there. Lots of triangles. What's the one in the Pacific up by Alaska? I can't remember. There's also one over Lake Michigan. Yeah, so triangles galore, but we have a lot of places that we can visit in Cryptic Corner to keep things fresh and interesting. We don't always have to talk about Bigfoot and aliens. I do like to, or ghost or whatever. We can expand it out a little bit into some other other claims of this nature. So stick around if you like Cryptic Corner. If you're watching this on Friday when I have my premiere of Cryptic Corner, thank you so much for tuning in, and we appreciate your patronage, and please remember to be kind and take care. Now, for my live audience, I didn't realize that was still open. For my live audience, we will be moving into Creation Watch. And we got a fun topic today. Now, I've been interacting with Paleologos a little bit here and there on Twitter and on his YouTube channel, and he does a lot of good work combating bad creationist arguments. But Paleologos is a younger creationist. Now, no, I'm not targeting Paleologos at this moment in this video. They haven't really made any claims that I want to argue with. They talk mostly about human evolution, and I generally talk about everything but human evolution. So we don't really cross paths a whole lot. I can talk about human evolution, but I'm not going to talk about it to any extent where someone would claim, or that I would be attempting to claim, that I had credentials in the field. Once you get into the genus Homo especially, I lose interest in it. It's not nearly as interesting as the larger changes of organisms across the biological spectrum. But Paleologos is a student of the school of Todd Wood. So that's who we're going to engage with today. We got Paul and Todd. What is a created kind? Let's talk creation. That doesn't sound like copyrighted
We
music.
talk a lot about created kinds.
Oh boy.
Or baramins.
Yeah.
You know, we kind of throw this terminology around a lot. But what does it really mean? That wasn't a play on words, by the way. What does it...
So anybody who's not familiar with the creationist community, baramins are their orchard of life origins, that each of these created kinds had an origin point that they branched out from, as opposed to all of life linking back to one last universal common ancestor, which we call Luca. Their model has multiple common ancestors for different kinds. The question is, what is a kind? And that's what they're going to be addressing.
You know, what is a created kind anyway? That's basically the question I'm asking. What is a created kind?
What does it mean? So for the rest of you out there wondering where we're laughing at, mean is the Hebrew word that's translated in the English Bible as kind. So what does it mean as a created kind? So, oh goodness, that's a hard question. And we often get criticized for this, and I think it's rather odd the way it's approached. So I've heard people say, you have to give me a formal definition for exactly what it is.
Why is that? What's wrong with that? Why do you need what's wrong with needing a formal definition so that we can classify organisms properly? If you think that there's a method to classifying organisms that's different than the way that we do, and that there's evidence for it, then you need to present it as a model. That's not a big ask. No one's asking you to have it perfect. We're changing, the phylogenetic model. When phylogeny came around, we changed so much of the way that we organize these things, because we found that a lot of this was convergent, that we thought was that was analogous. So yeah, or homologous.
And I give them one, and then they just act like that's not good enough. Which, okay, fair enough. Other times I've heard people tell me, until you give me a list of all the created kinds, then there's no point in even talking about it, which I think Well, that's
Now, that is definitely unfair. I don't want a list of all the created kinds. I don't expect anybody to have a list of all the created kinds. A collection of kinds and how we define them and how we differentiate them from other kinds would be nice.
That's odd. How do we find all the created kinds if we can't talk about and work on it? So,
well, of course you can talk about it and work on it, but you need, and it's fine to take all the time you need, but check in with us. Let us know what you got so far, because without it, it just seems like you're saying this because it's what the Bible says. Well, I want some. There should be some way to define what the parameters of a kind are. To say that, okay, so here's how you figure out what kind this is. These are the features of this kind that no other kind has that make it part of this kind. I just don't see that in nature.
that's a funny thing, but okay. So a created kind. The idea came out of studies of species, I guess is the best way to talk about it. So back in the
Okay, so let me talk about the cladistic naming. Okay, so the names and groupings that we have are arbitrary, so they don't actually mean anything. The only thing they mean anything to is people, is to humans. As far as the way that natural organisms evolve and populations diversify, they don't care where we draw the lines to say you are still part of this species and now you are a new species. But species was, generally speaking, is the only one that has the only taxonomic level that has a clear defined definition, which is that they can, that they're interfertile together. But the problem with that is that even in that case, the edges get fuzzy. I mean, the edges get fuzzy all the way out to what we, genetically speaking, would call like the family level. Even that there may be possibility to be interfertile. Yeah.
A high Middle Ages, just before, say, the Reformation and Columbus voyage and so forth, there were all manner of ideas about how organisms propagated themselves, right? So there was still going around the story that if you had rotten meat and you left it out, it would make flies from the meat. And this was, spontaneous generation. Mm-hmm. And so these ideas were believed. There were.
It is nice to hear a creationist who understands that spontaneous generation and abiogenesis are going to be two different things.
Even things that were, recipes for how to make mice. Put your sweaty clothes in a place and make sure it's dark, and then mice will come out of them or something. And so, and I think it's part of that because people would uncover these mouse nests in their whatever and think, oh, this is where the mice came from. But after a while, people began to, with the scientific revolution, people began to study.
There used to be like a thing about the horsehair worm where they would do that. Like if you put this under a bucket, you'll have a. They'd call it a snake, but it was a horsehair worm. People used to do.
Study where critters come from and where animals and plants come from, and in doing so, they would find, okay, well, it's not true. This was sort of a really a milestone in biological science, was finding out that no, in fact, rotting meat does not produce flies. Rotting meat will rot by itself, and the flies are hatched from eggs that are laid on the meat. And this was demonstrated by an Italian guy named Francesco Redi, mm-hmm. and it was done
in Louis Pasteur, of course, with the famous experiment with the chicken broth exposed to air and then not exposed to air with the microbes as well, was also a death knell to the idea of spontaneous generation.
In the 1600s. And from there, basically everybody got this idea that, well, if animals come from mommy and daddy animals that are of the same type, then that just goes all the way back to God, right? That just goes all the way back to...
Right. This was called the Great Chain of Being. It was a model that was followed pretty well up to the Enlightenment era.
Their origin in, Creation Week. So that was one idea that was influential in this development of the created kind. The other idea from it comes from studies of species. And so people who began to say, all right, well, if baby animals come from mommy and daddy animals of the same sort, what is that? Well, they called that a species. And then they said, all right, well, let's list all the species. And so in that attempt to list the species, then they discover, oh, this is complicated. There are things that maybe they're good species, maybe they're not good species. And you would have disagreements. One expert would look at a group of creatures and come away with one list of species, and another expert would look at the same group of creatures and come away with a slightly different list, where they would say this version of the species, this version.
Right, because of that, like I said, the lines get kind of blurred when you get to the edge. You'll have one population that can reproduce with this population, but can't reproduce with the population on the other side. Population in the middle can reproduce with all of them, and there'll be one maybe to the south that can only reproduce with the one in the west. Because of the way they diversified and the way their genetics changed as their bodies adapted to a slightly different, sometimes a very slightly different ecological system that they're part of. Maybe there's more predators in this area, so they spend more time under the logs, and the ones with darker skin color that have a more compressed body and can hide better are the ones that are more successful. And over time, the more and more compressed, darker versions of this lizard or whatever become the genetically dominant, to the point where their genetics are so driven towards having those traits that they can no longer reproduce with the organisms that did not have that evolutionary change.
Of the creature is a species, and the other person would say, no, it's not a species, it's part of this species, and so forth. So that led to even more study, and plant breeding became really popular.
Let's speed this up a little bit.
Especially in England in the 19th century. And so that led to a guy named William Herbert. He was a clergyman who bred amaryllis, which is a flower, right?
Good to see you, John.
He discovers, oh my goodness, you can make new what appear to be species. You can cross two things, and if you keep working at it over several generations, eventually you'll get an entirely new amaryllis with new properties that breed true.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something we do. I mean, it's like brassica, like we do with cauliflower and broccoli and Brussels sprouts and kohlrabi and so many different vegetables. They're all basically the same organism, just spliced and changed and manipulated.
And all of that then sort of feeds into Charles Darwin's perspective on it. And Darwin just said, well, if you can make a new species by breeding, then that could happen in the natural world. And he marshaled a bunch of evidence for that as well. Now, the creationist reaction initially was to sort of just reject what Darwin had said, which basically was because, well, that's just the reaction to one extreme is always to go to the other extreme, right? I mean, if all species evolved from a common ancestor, well, then the right answer must be that no species evolved. They all were created. And eventually, in the 20th century, we had other creationists come along.
Which Todd agrees is ridiculous, to say that all the species were created in their current state.
Who knew more about species and so forth, and they were able to say, no, in fact, it looks more like there are groups of species that came out of a common created ancestral population, whatever that might be.
Why?
And then over time, those species.
What's the dividing line though for that? To say that, okay, so these, like, I'll talk about carnivora in a second. We're going to let Todd talk for a little bit more.
As they've spread out across the earth after the flood, they've adapted to local conditions and they've generated new, what we would think of as species. So the created kind is not necessarily a species, but it can often include more than one species. Now, this is all from biology, right? This is all just working out biology and working out how that might relate to the way God describes things in Genesis. So when God creates in Genesis, he creates things after their kind. And you see that phrase repeated often in Genesis. And so that's where the idea of created kind, the terminology comes from.
Yeah, well, it's because they didn't know about speciation and diversification and just they didn't understand this gradient of the way that life changes over time and geography to adapt to the environment, and how long-term radiation like that can lead to these massive speciation changes in what you would call a new kind being generated.
Comes from Genesis 1. And it also comes, you see it again during the flood narrative when Noah is told to take 2 of every kind aboard the ark with him.
Mm-hmm.
That God would bring those animals to him and that he would gather them up and put them on the ark. And so that leads to the idea that, well, maybe the ark was not full of millions of species, which is what the critics want to tell us, which is preposterous. But in fact,
you need to tell us. I shouldn't say you need to tell us. I want to know how many species you think that there were on the ark, though, and I want to understand why you think that those species are separate, or those kinds, as you call them. Why you think that they're separate? Like, what separates a felid and a canid? What are the features that say that these are 2 separate kinds? What has given you the position to conclude that the homologies between these 2 clades, the things that link them together as carnivorans exclusively in this group, they have carnivoran traits that are distinct among that clade, the way their teeth are positioned, the way their glands are, and then each of those groups within the felids and the canids, and those aren't just cats and dogs. The felids includes hyenas and mongooses and civets, whereas the canids include dogs and bears and seals, mustelids and weasels, otters. So you have these 2 groups, right? But they have homologies together, things that they share in common, such as they're largely carnivorous, for instance. Of course, the felids. The distinction between the 2 is that the felids are more hypercarnivorous, though there are hypercarnivorous canids as well. But these 2 groups are sharing a clade called carnivora, where they include features that we would call carnivoran features: the heavy canine teeth, the scent glands, the anal glands, all these things that make a carnivore a carnivore. That are distinct and passed down from their ancestral relatives. You have wolverines are caniforms. They are in the mustelid family with the weasels, badgers, and skunks and such. Otters. Right, and good. That's a good thing too. A lynx and a tiger. Where is a lynx and a tiger? Are a lynx and a tiger the same kind? Because a tiger can interbreed with a lion, and a lion can interbreed with a leopard. Now, a leopard can interbreed with a cougar, a mountain lion. Now, a mountain lion is not a pantherine. It's not in the subfamily pantherine. It's in the feline grouping with house cats and lynxes. So it is actually closer in relation to the lynx than it is to the jaguar or leopard. However, it can interbreed with a leopard. A leopard and a cougar can interbreed and produce offspring that are dwarfed and infertile, but they do reproduce. Now, so where do we draw these lines at, Todd?
May have contained representatives of different created kinds that then generated new species after the flood. So it's a synthesis of what we know from biology that we can reasonably infer and see directly in nature, and it's also putting together pieces of the puzzle, I think, from what this Bible describes about creation and what the Bible describes about the flood. So a formal definition, people have suggested that if two species could interbreed, they must belong to the same created kind. That's one way to recognize one. Another might be...
But what about species that can interbreed with one other group in a clade, but not another, but the one they can breed with can interbreed with that other? How do you explain these things? That's speciation, Todd. That's what we're talking about. That's it, going from being a group within the group that can reproduce and could be considered the same species to being an out group and moving towards being its own species.
If you think that God creates a created kind to exhibit certain traits and he doesn't want those traits to change, then you might imagine that a created kind has a certain underlying recognizable set of features that you could recognize, and so that leads to various other...
Right. Felines have features that are distinct to felines, to cats, to house cats, to wild cats, to cougars, to lynxes. And then you have the pantherines, which have features that are distinct to pantherines, like lions and tigers and leopards and jaguars. Then you have features that are distinct to both those groups together. Felinae. Yeah. Okay. So, and then from there, you have traits that are shared and features that are shared between them and hyenas and civets and mongoose. So you have additional traits that are shared with these other clades. And then from there, you have traits that they share with the other carnivores, with the caniforms. And then from there, you have traits that they share with the Larazotheres, which includes common ancestors to ungulates like horses and sheep and cattle. A lot of the animals that we domesticate, all the hooved animals is a good way to think about it, even though you kind of include hippos and stuff. But so you got traits that they share in common with those, and then you have traits that they're going to share in common with the Afrotheres. And then you're going to have traits that they share in common with the Afrotheres and the Xenotheres. And then you're going to have traits that they share in common with all the placental mammals. Then you're going to have traits that they share in common with the marsupials. And then you're going to have traits that they share in common with the monotremes. And then you're going to have traits that they share in common with all synapsids. And then you're going to have traits that they share in common with the diapsids. Then you're going to have traits that they share in common with all tetrapods. Then you're going to have traits that they share in common with all vertebrates, and so on and so forth, on down the line. So how are we reconciling this? What are the traits that you're saying are inherently part of a kind, and the traits that you're saying that are just, same creator? How do we differentiate those?
Sort of conceptions of the created kind that we might use to study the fossil record. But yeah, I mean, it all basically comes back to this notion that species are not fixed, they're not permanent, and they're not, they are generated out of sort of regular biological processes that were operating after the flood. But evolution does not go on forever. It's not like all things are related to a common ancestor. So yeah, and frankly,
I disagree.
It's very useful, and it's produced an enormous amount of research over the past 30 years that I've been involved, and it's been fossil work. People have studied the fossil record for this. People have used genetics to study created kinds. People have used anatomy to study created kinds. There are...
And have any of those studies found what traits we're dividing these kinds by? What features, physiological, genetically, what features are we dividing kinds on?
A host of different approaches to studying created kinds that I think is good, and hopefully we'll start to see some fruit. What's really interesting is when you get a lot of different conceptions and ideas about created kinds that sort of converge on a similar conclusion, which I think is very helpful in thinking about there's something to this rather than just, creationist wishful thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So
but you say there's you infer that there's something to it, but you're not explaining what it is or how you're making that inference. Because I'm not trying to be facetious about it or anything, but you've gone over how the classification system works, but you haven't said what features that we are going by to separate these kinds. I mean, that's what we need. You don't have to give me an extensive list of all the kinds. Give me just a kind and explain what features, why it's different or the same as its close relatives, or what we consider close relatives.
So just as it's not always easy to tell exactly what a species is in any particular instance, what you're saying is it's not always easy to tell exactly what a kind is, and so we have to apply multiple criteria.
Yeah.
There isn't one kind of magic bullet that can tell us what a created kind is.
that's right.
It looks like your barrel's empty. No magic bullet. No magic bullets. There's nothing. I was hoping to get something more substance than this.
And so hopefully, by applying lots of different criteria, we can sort of converge on the right answer.
Right.
And it may well be, it almost certainly isn't true, that the created kind is equivalent to one particular level in the taxonomic hierarchy. So you're saying, you can have multiple species in a created kind, but the created kind could be sometimes a family, sometimes a suborder, sometimes a subfamily. Could be at different levels.
We've come up with different answers for different sorts of creatures too. I mean, it does not seem to be the same across the board, and the number of species in a created kind is not the same. There are some created kinds that have an enormous number of species, a surprising number that I think alarms.
I just noticed there was jump cuts in this. Did you all see that? I didn't realize. I thought this was just a clip of a live stream.
A lot of creationists that how could that many species be descended from a common ancestor from the flood, and yet I would say most, based on what I know about, say, the mammals, for example, most created kinds have very few species in them, maybe half a dozen or less. So it's uneven, and
it's the more specialized a clade becomes, the less diverse they become. So in a species that is very very open to different to adapt and adaptable to different kinds of ecological pressures, tends to be more speciose than a species that is adapted to a specific ecological niche that they require. Like elephants, for instance, there can only be so many of these megafaunal grazers in an environment to allow it to maintain balance. So they're very specialized to fill that niche, but like the rodents, on the other hand, can fill a lot of different niches. They're very plastic, so they can expand into a multitude of environments and ecological biomes. So yeah, it's about plasticity.
And it's very similar to what you have with species. There are different concepts of what species are. And they have. It's not the same for all types of creatures. Species concept among bacterial people who study bacteria, not the same sort of species concepts that you would use in the fossil record, which is not the same sort of species concept that you would use out in ecology and studying organisms in their natural environment. And so just because we don't have it all perfectly pinned down right now doesn't make it any less science.
All right, so that was Creation Watch with Mr. Todd Wood, and Paul was the host on there, and they were talking about created kind. I don't feel like I learned anything. I feel like I have more arguments for him than anything. And I'd love a chance to sit down and talk to Todd. Maybe I can set that up somehow. We can have a conversation. That'd be fun, wouldn't it? Anyhow, we covered the creation our created kinds and what that means and what that means to creationists. I don't understand what they mean still. I still don't understand where they're where they're drawing their lines at and why they're drawing them there. And I'd like to explore that idea with a creationist, whether with him or with Paleologos, or maybe Rebecca even. Rebecca likes to talk about evolution. Anyway, that was Creation Watch. We covered a conversation with Todd Wood on Created Kind. If you are joining me Wednesday, thank you so much for dropping by and hanging out while we watch some creationists try to teach us science. See you next week, and be kind and take care. All right. So there's a couple of things that I do still have left to go over, but we're making good time. The first one is just going to be, this is going to be what our little hive science is for today. And let me see about pulling that up here. And it's going to be, I don't know, it's just a fun little jaunt. Here we go. All right. So a fun little jaunt around the Amazon basin. We are in Bolivia, and these are Bolivian river dolphins. 2 male dolphins were seen playing with an anaconda while sexually aroused in a perplexing encounter captured by researchers. Yep, so here we have the 2 dolphins. You can see the snake in their mouths. This is not a green anaconda, which are truly massive animals that I don't think the dolphins would have nearly as much fun playing with. 2 Bolivian river dolphins were seen swimming around and playing in the Tijamushi River in Bolivia. The unusual part, they were carrying a Bini anaconda, an apex predator, in their mouths. Researchers captured the rare encounter in August 2021 in photos and described it in a paper published last month in the Journal of Ecology, which we do have here. But it's super detailed and very, very extensive. So we're just going to read the blurb article, and I really need to start putting these links into the description. But I will try to remember to put this in the description for all my fans of dolphins playing with snakes and getting boners about it. Okay, so researchers captured the rare encounter in August 2021 in photos and described it in papers published last month in the journal Ecology. The research team spotted a group of dolphins immediately upon arriving to the site and began taking photos. Only when they reviewed their first images did they realize the dolphins were carrying a snake, according to the study. The researchers said it became clear the dolphins were playing with the snake rather than trying to eat it, in part because the interaction lasted for at least 7 minutes. At one point, they observed the adult males each holding on to the anaconda and swimming in unison. Upon reviewing the photos later, the researchers realized the dolphins had erect penises, which also supports the idea that it was a playful interaction. Playing is well-documented behavior in mammals and dolphins generally, but the encounter was the first ever recorded between a Bolivian river dolphin and a Bini anaconda. The researchers said many questions remain and offered possible alternative explanations for the behavior, including predation. There you go, there's the erect penis right there, so you can see this dolphin is very, very happy to be playing with this snake. This one over here is actually holds the snake right now, is rolling around with it. The Bini anaconda are large semi-aquatic snakes generally reaching more than 6 feet long and typically have no known predators. Other than one record of cannibalism, there is no published record of an animal eating a Bini anaconda. So, again, it's not a green anaconda, not the giant massive anacondas, like from the horror movie, that they don't really move like that or anything. They're just large aquatic snakes. There are several clades of anaconda. This is just one of them, and one of the smaller ones. It's also smaller than the yellow anaconda, which is a fairly robust species as well. You can kind of see the scale on that in that image if you know how big the river dolphins are anyway. Because the snake was submerged for much of the encounter, the researchers said it was most likely died. The researchers said it was also possible the adult male dolphins were teaching the juvenile dolphins that were present about the Benny anaconda, or that the dolphins were engaged in an attempt at courtship. They said male Amazon river dolphins have been observed in the past carrying objects in what appears to be an attempt to aim at females. Diana Reese, a marine mammal scientist at Hunter College who was not part of the study, told the New York Times the dolphins may have been sexually stimulated by the anaconda. It could have been something to rub on. Oh boy. Yeah. Anyway, so that was our Amazon river dolphins, and not Amazon river dolphins, Bolivian river dolphins. Very closely related to Amazon river dolphins, though. Really cool species, nearly blind too, but really great echolocation. So they're really good at locating things in dark, murky water, which is probably how they found this snake. All right, NJ, you have a good day. Much love from the Hive. Thanks for dropping in. Okay, so that was our little bit of hive science for today. 2 male dolphins were seen playing with an anaconda while sexually aroused in perplexing encounter captured by researchers. Thank you for tuning in for this little segment of hive science, and we appreciate you here in the Hive, and please remember to be kind and take care. Okay, so next up, and this is going to be our final segment, and this is what I actually this is what the thumbnail was about and everything. So we will be getting into conservation and hunting. So first things first, today in science. Today in science, by the way, is where I get all the science news that runs above my head here. So if for days I don't have live from the Hive, if you want to know what Today in Science is, it's just todayinsci.com. Now, today in science, American president and conservationist Theodore Roosevelt, whose term included efforts to conserve national resources, especially the passage of the New Land Reclamation Act in 1902. He was the first president to ride an automobile, go underwater in a submarine, or fly in an airplane. Immediately after leaving his presidency, he undertook a safari to Africa as a hunter and naturalist. In 1913, he traveled on a scientific expedition to the interior of Brazil, which produced geographic, geological, and zoological information, and almost 2,000 specimens of birds and mammals were collected for the American Museum of Natural Science. Okay. Yes, Americanism reached the marrow of his bones, blah, blah, blah. Okay, never before in my life has it been so hard for me to accept the death of any man as it's been for me to accept the death of Theodore Roosevelt. Hold on, I thought is this a different article? There was something I was looking for about his conservation efforts. Let me see here. Okay, in 1908, the 3-day conference of governor opened at the White House, called by President Theodore Roosevelt to consider the problem of conservation. It was attended by the governors of the states and territories, the members of the Supreme Court, and the cabinet, scientists, and various national leaders. On May 15th, 1908, the governors adopted a declaration supporting conservation. One result was the National Conservation Commission, appointed by Roosevelt on the 8th of June, 1908, which prepared the first inventory of the natural resources of the United States with chairman for water, forest, land, and minerals. Also, the conference led to annual governors conference or conferences and appointment of 38 state conservation commissions throughout his life. Before, during, and after his presidency, Roosevelt was an ardent, knowledgeable naturalist, which was reflected in his concern for the land while president. Okay, so the thing about Teddy Roosevelt that I want to make clear is, yeah, obviously conservationist. He was also a hunter, though. As I read in that previous page, he contributed a lot to the specimens that were collected and used in museums around the U.S. Yeah, I think there's Teddy Roosevelt specimens all over the U.S. in museums, but not just from the Amazon, but also from other areas. He was also a great outdoorsman of the western frontier of the U.S., which was dwindling in his day, but was still there and still hanging in there. So, yeah, that was part of it. Is Brainbug able to ground the instantiation of the necessary ultimate grounding precondition of the substantiation, providing all possible, impossible possibilities as an atheist? Oh man, now I have to take my channel down. Damn it, you got me. Sorry guys, that's it. We're done. No more Brainbug. No more Hive. All right, so today I am attempting in my best capacity, and I am no Teddy Roosevelt, but to take up this mantle of conservation and hunting balance, because this popped up in my feed recently, and I do not celebrate the death of anybody at all. That's not the one I was talking about. The death of anybody, the death of any animal at all. I will not celebrate these hunters getting their trophies. I will not celebrate them killing the organisms that they're killing, especially when they're killing apex predators and such. It seems ridiculous and redundant. But there is a great deal of argument to be made for trophy hunting being a benefit to conservation of rare species, because the efforts and money that goes into preserving these organisms to keep the revenue flow coming from these rich hunters preserves land aside for the organisms to thrive in, make sure they have a steady and healthy population. The government themselves in some of these African countries go out and tend to these animals that they normally would not have any interest in financially, and make sure that their ecology is healthy and that the animals are healthy and that they are thriving in order to sustain a population to keep the revenue flow from these hunters coming, because they throw a lot of money at these nations. Now, whether or not that all that money goes into preservation and conservation is questionable, and there are many organizations out there who will throw a monkey wrench right into that theory, but the effort is unavoidably obvious that these countries are doing this, that they are setting aside these reserves, that they are making an effort to preserve these animals. Whether those efforts are successful or the measures that they're taking are a success is hit and miss. From what I've understood, a lot of it is miss, which is unfortunate, but there is a market for them, and that market does encourage governments, especially governments with a capitalist system, to preserve these environments for the animals as a resource. So, I guess I'm switched around. This was the thing I was talking about. So, back in 2017, this trophy hunter who hunts lions and elephants was eaten by a crocodile. His name here, let me see here, Scott Van Zyl, well-known South African prize hunter. Also had a safari firm where he took clients on large game hunts in addition to being a hunter himself. Lions, cheetahs, giraffes, and elephants were among his prey. So elephants, I cannot agree with. I'm not going to support any hunting of any species of elephant at this point in time. If and when the populations rebound to a pre-industrialized level, it's definitely something we could talk about. And that's dubious too, because elephants were suffering from human encroachment well before the Industrial Revolution as well. So I mean, we could really go back to if we get their numbers back up to before the Roman era, then we'll talk about hunting elephants. But giraffes, okay, I could see hunting giraffes as a prey animal for trophy hunting. Now, again, that's pending that the proceeds go to preserving the environment for these animals, and that they are being taken care of and tended to properly, and that they're allowed to. So I say tended to, I mean very hands-off tended to, just making sure, that that humans aren't blocking the rivers or deforestation or mowing down the land for agriculture and things like that. As long as the money is going towards preservation of an environment for them to live in, because if the money is going towards programs that are going to help destroy the giraffes' habitat, then that's kind of counterproductive. That's just double impact on their population. It's a very bad thing. It's going to have a very negative impact on giraffes and the animals that share the giraffes' habitat. So no, don't do that. But with this guy, and it popped up on my Facebook feed. So, and it's been a couple of years ago, but people just pop things in as they see them. And people were really celebrating this guy's death, and I don't agree with that. He was operating, as far as I can tell, within the parameters of the law. So, I mean, you want to blame you can't really blame the individual as much if you got a problem with the system that they're in. So you want to blame the system. You don't want to blame the individual. Mr. Scott Van Zyl was operating within a system that was allowing for this, that was telling him that it was that he had fair use to utilize their game and to hunt these large animals, and he wasn't doing anything illegal. Now, ethically speaking, I don't think that trophy hunting is beneficial to any organism. Just in and of itself, it's actually just the revenue system that makes it beneficial. And until capitalism is overturned, until we have a system where money isn't the end all be all for any actions that we take, we are going to need some kind of monetary incentive to preserve these animals. So they're these people, not just Mr. Van Zyl, but all these government officials making these decisions. They need a monetary reason. They need a capitalist reason to preserve these organisms. So trophy hunting is one way for them to do that. I would never trophy hunt. I'm not a hunter. I've hunted in the past. I grew up in rural Missouri. You don't get to reach adulthood without going out on a hunt. I've hunted coon and I've hunted deer. I would not do either of those things on my own. But I did. And oh, hey Ethan, good to see ya. So yeah, until we can overturn capitalism, we're just going to have to deal with trophy hunting, because it's the only way not the only way, it's the most effective way to preserve these species from being wiped off the face of the earth, is to have a monetary reason to have them around for these folks to go out and kill them, of course, but only when they reach a sustainable population. So the question is, what is that point? And that's going to depend on a lot of things. That's part of the reason why I said about elephants. So yeah, elephants should not be hunted. They have a long lifespan, and they reproduce slowly, and their population is too sparse for such endeavors. So I don't agree with that, and I don't agree for the most part, I don't agree with hunting predators, but really when it comes to predators like lions, tigers, cheetahs, all the big cats and bears, that's really the only thing that's going to save them from being wiped out, is people having a financial interest in keeping them alive for hunters, because economically speaking, that's their only value to the economy as a trophy species. So having a monetary reason to keep them around is necessary. It's required. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. If species don't have any value to society, the best you can do is just appeal to human nature and say, oh, this poor animal. That is not going to get you as much money as saying, hey, you can hunt and keep a trophy of this tiger if you give us all this money to help maintain a habitat for these tigers to live in. That's just the way it is. I'm sorry, and I'm probably going to get canceled for taking this position and I'm not pro trophy hunting at all, but I am a realist who lives in a capitalist system and understands that in order to preserve these species, we need a reason for them to be preserved. But is the trophy hunting providing the consistent conservation benefits? A report by the Democratic staff of the House Committee of Natural Resources. Note, this report has not been officially adopted by the Committee of Natural Resources and may not necessarily reflect the view of its members. Released in June 13th, 2016. So this is a little bit dated, but that's okay. Kind of give us an idea where things were headed anyway. Hunting of imperiled animals can save species from extinction. It is claimed that is counterintuitive to some and makes perfect sense to others. It is also the official position of the United States government, with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services claiming that well-managed wildlife programs that include limited sustainable sport hunting can and have provided a significant long-term benefit to the population of many species. One, however, the debate has reached a fever pitch since 2015 death of Zimbabwe's famed Cecil the lion at the hands of an American dentist and trophy hunting hobbyist Walter Palmer. I think this is a typo here. It might be Water Palmer, but I think it was Walter Palmer. The report evaluates that claims as it pertains to prized species and popular hunting locations, and examines the conditions under which the trophy hunting may contribute to conservation. Hey, Doc Fearsome. Good to see you this morning. Many governments and a number of private and non-profit groups, including conservation organizations, have long viewed well-regulated hunting as an important conservation tool. Indeed, much of North American system of wildlife management is based on the principle that most hunters want healthy populations of game animals so that they will always have something to hunt. That's kind of my argument there about the capitalist gain. And if, monetize hunting these animals to put money into the conservation system is the argument they're talking about here. And we're going to find out what they have to say about it, what the author here has to say. In places like the United States, where laws against wildlife poaching are generally well respected and enforced, and transparent mechanisms funnel taxes and fees generated by hunters to effective conservation programs, hunting has helped restore populations of some prized game species when quotas were based on sound science. In places where hunting is poorly managed, as is the case in some parts of Africa, that claim trophy hunting provides conservation benefits is much harder to prove, especially for species with populations that have already been depleted. By definition, trophy hunters hunt to bring home a trophy for display consisting of all or part of the kill. In order to help ensure trophy hunting does not contribute to the extinction of a species, the Endangered Species Act requires that hunting trophies of wildlife listed as endangered or threatened may only be brought into the United States if their importation, and by extension the hunt, enhances the survival of the species. This high threshold is an important and appropriate safeguard against extinction. An analysis of 5 major threatened and endangered game species, the African elephant, African lion, black rhinoceros, southern white rhinoceros, and leopard, of 4 countries, Namibia, South Africa, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe, found that trophy hunting is managed well in some areas and poorly in others. In many cases, the laws, institutions, and capacity necessary to make trophy hunting benefit conservation are lacking. The analysis also found that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, FWS, the agency responsible for allowing or prohibiting protected species imports, could make significant improvements to its permitting process that would help ensure that only trophies which truly enhance species survivals are allowed into the country. The report makes the following recommendations. Ensure that trophy hunts benefit conservation. Close regulatory loopholes that harm protected species. Tighten trophy import permitting requirements. Increase fees for trophy hunting to fund science and conservation. Allow only imports taken using fair chase hunting methods. So that's like no baiting them and then shooting them is that last one. But yes, these all are fine points to me, and I think that this is basically my position on the whole thing, and where I stand on it. I think that we can do trophy hunting. I think we can allow for trophy hunting, at least within the system that we have, if we regulate it in such a way to help preserve the species. That's really the only way that the U.S. can impact species in other countries, like these African countries listed here, other places where big game hunting takes place is like India, and other Southeast Asian countries, South America, of course, in the Amazon, and Brazil and Bolivia, Colombia. There's big game hunting as well. So as Americans, our greatest impact on that is our rich dentists and doctors that go out to these places and hunt and spend money in those countries. We need to make sure that when these guys go out, that they're following within these criteria here, and that we do make it so that for every tiger that they kill, we are preserving the life of at least 2 tigers in order to make it worthwhile. So, yeah, that's pretty straightforward and simple. Let's see, what else do I have here? Oh, that's just where I was looking at. That guy killed by the... Okay. Trophy hunting, a complex picture. We should be wrapping up here in just a minute, but I'm just going to finish up about... Yeah, there's big game hunting in the western U.S. too, but it's pretty well regulated right now. I mean, yes, our big game in most of the U.S. has been completely and utterly obliterated, but some of the western states, especially in the upper Rockies there, we do maintain populations of some large game animals. And I would love to see those large game animals restored in population across the nation, but people are just terrified of that prospect of having mountain lions living in the hills and stuff. Which I get. If they're scary animals, I understand. But yeah. Anyhow, trophy hunting has become a divisive topic, but calls for an outright ban risk undermining the substantial contribution that well-managed hunting can make to conservation. So-called smart bans, which selectively target operators or even countries that fail to ensure hunting deliveries meaningful conservation outcome and benefits to rural communities, could help clean up an industry plagued by corruption and bad practices. Yep, like Professor David McDonald with the lion known as Cecil. Didn't that last article say it was a different hunter? Something water. Anyway, and I thought maybe it was Walter. Anyhow, I once had a study animal shot by hunters. In my case, it was a leopard known to us as Wilbur. The first time I encountered Wilbur, he materialized out of a wall of apple leaf scrub and walked right up to my open Land Rover, brushing the side of my vehicle while I held my breath. Leopards can be like that, either so shy that they disappear long before you see them, or so bold they ignore you completely. This was nearly 10 years ago, but I still remember the shock, pain, and anger we felt all when the shock, pain, and anger we all felt when word reached us to our research camp that Wilbur, by then fitted with a VHF tracking collar, had been shot by hunters. Scientists are supposed to remain dispassionate observers, but when you spend hundreds of hours in the company of a wild animal, you get to know its character, and inevitably a bond forms. You become invested in the animal's fate. While a respectful distance remains, a study animal's death is still mourned, especially when its death has only served to furnish someone with pathetic trophies. All right, so this brings to mind like Gorillas in the Mist. I don't know if you've never read the book. I have a copy back here somewhere. I actually read that when I was in the hospital, but what a lot of it's about is anti-trophy hunting for gorillas, because gorillas used to be a heavy target of trophy hunting. They'd have their hands cut off and made into ashtrays, their hands and feet made into ashtrays for Westerners. It's a gross practice that still continues to this day in some remote areas, and there's still black market demand for them. Yeah, but so you can see how spending time in the field studying an animal, studying a group of animals, a population, you could form attachments to members in the group or to the group as a whole. We learned that the client had been sitting in a hide with his professional hunting guide, staking out a bait. This is how leopards are shot, from a seat in cover and at short range, with the big cat lured to its death. It seems not so different from shooting fish in a barrel. In the gloaming, the hunter and his guide claimed not to have seen the collar around Wilbur's neck. I've always found that hard to believe. Collars are very obvious on leopards, contrasting strong against the spotted fur and sitting proud on their short coat. I suspect that Wilbur was just too fine of a specimen to pass up. Under time pressure, with the client having paid thousands of dollars for his trophy, I believe the guide chose not to see the collar and sanctioned the shot, but I can never know for sure. Yeah. And that's the baiting thing. That's that last thing we were looking at, where we're giving the suggestions on what steps to take. This kind of hunting should be banned, should be outlawed. I don't agree with baiting them, and while you sit in a chair 15 feet away and just execute them as they come to eat your bait. That's not hunting. That's not that no hunter that I know would say that that's what they want to do. But it is what it is. I mean, if you're hunting to feed yourself, you live in a rural area or something, and you live in hunting's legal in your area, and you're gonna eat it, then yeah, I guess getting that close to it is a boon. But if you're just trophy hunting to show what a awesome hunter you are, this is not the way to go about it. Nobody's impressed by you luring a big cat in while you sit safely up in a tree hide and shooting it at essentially what would be like not point blank, but within a few feet of the animal. You're just executing it at that point. Sorry, I got a little bit of emotion flaring up there. Sorry, everybody. Whatever the truth of Wilbur's death, the client and his guide left the country shortly afterward, and not long after, the hunting was suspended in Botswana. The hunter had been perfectly entitled to shoot a leopard in that area, but the established code of practice was and is to avoid shooting collared research animals, partly out of courtesy. A great deal of time and effort is invested in deploying collars, and partly because good hunters value the insight that the collar-studied animals give everyone with an interest in managing and conserving wildlife. Today, Botswana is slowly opening up its hunting industry again, but this is attracting vocal criticism from some Western animal rights campaigners. This anti-hunting campaign strikes a chord with many whom imagine an overweight, inanely grinning hunter posing proudly next to a butchered animal are repugnant. Such seemingly indefensible sport is favored by Donald J. Trump and ex-king of Spain, but should it be simply banned? The threat is not hunting. Perhaps surprisingly, few conservation scientists endorse these populist calls to ban hunting. Instead, many are alarmed by the potential unintended consequences of such a ban. Why is this? When so many conservation biologists are disgusted by trophy hunting, when some of us have even lost well-loved studied animals to hunters' bullets, why are we reluctant to support total ban? The truth is that trophy hunting is not the main threat facing wild animals in Africa. For most species, it is not a threat of any sort. In fact, the opposite is often true. Trophy hunting provides a means of funding conservation work and protecting habitat that has sustained wild animal populations across large swaths of the continent, where without hunters' dollars, wild bush would soon be taken over by agriculture or the wildlife decimated by poachers. Across many African safari countries, the area of land managed for hunting is actually equal to or larger than the area set aside for phototourism in national parks. This is why lions are in fact increasing in southern Africa, where they are legally hunted, while their population has crashed in countries like Kenya, where trophy hunting has been banned since 1977. Ditto giraffes, ditto rhinos, ditto elephants. If we ban trophy hunting in areas of land protected for wildlife, could shrink drastically, putting these populations at risk. But wait, I hear you cry, why do hunters have to kill these things? Why can't we turn these hunting zones into more ecotourism destinations? Why can't phototourism fund the protection of these habitats? This idea sounds appealing, but the reality is that away from popular tourist destinations like the Serengeti or the Masai Mara, tourist operators often struggle to attract guests. Animals may be too scarce, biting flies too abundant, or views too unremarkable. Do you know anyone who has been on a photo safari to Chad or Central African Republic? Botswana's attempt. Botswana did try to auction its hunting areas to photographic tourism companies after its 2012 hunting moratorium, but only a few of the most desirable ex-hunting wildlife management areas were leased successfully, and most have remained unoccupied since the ban. Hunters were happy to visit these areas. Other tourists are not. But the miles and miles of flat, thorny scrubland where animals are rarely seen and the view may be limited to a few meters remains vital for wildlife. They link protected areas together, securing gene flow between otherwise isolated populations, and they provide refuges for so-called fugitive species like cheetahs and African wild dog species that can struggle to compete with larger predators in a more popular tourist area where lions and hyenas dominate. In Kaza, Transfrontier Conservation Area, 500,000 square kilometers, 200,000 square miles of wildland, reaching across Namibia, Angola, Zambia, Botswana, and Zimbabwe to form the largest contiguous protected area outside of Antarctica. Hunting areas play a vital role in maintaining landscape scale integrity. If hunting were banned, what would happen to this connectivity? Since hunting was banned in Botswana, the boreholes that hunters paid for have dried up and poaching has reportedly increased. Poaching takes a far greater toll on wildlife population than trophy hunting, with a far greater impact on females and overall population numbers. Meanwhile, since hunting bans, rural communities in Botswana have reported increasing conflicts with and resentment towards wildlife, now that they do not receive any income from hunting to help compensate for crop loss, stock depredation, and thankfully rarer human mortality caused by lions, elephants, and other wild animals. The situation was unsuitable, and so Botswana's government reopened trophy hunting, offering the promise of income, employment, and meat to communities living with wildlife. In countries that support more elephants than any other, Botswana is surely entitled to manage its wildlife as it sees fit. But this hasn't stopped distant celebrities and animal rights campaigners from criticizing this move, causing some of the affected community to feel understandably aggrieved. I think it's talking about Sheena and Elizabeth. Grow clover patches for bees. Yes, please. I leave a strip in my yard of wildflowers. I encourage everybody to do so. Check your city ordinance. If you're part of a homeowners association, you may not be able to do that. But and thank you, Doc Fearson. Yeah, I'm trying to find a balanced position to take on this topic, because there is some good points being made here as well. And as a conservation activist, I have to think about what's best for all the animals and their biomes that they live in, and not just the individual getting hunted, of course, but it's hard to not get emotionally attached to different individuals. I follow several individual big cats on Twitter in the wild, and a couple of Facebook channels, or not Facebook channels, but YouTube channels for individual wild big cats and individual prides. In response to an anti-trophy hunting campaign supported by animal rights activists and celebrities, more than 50 African community leaders recently signed an open letter defending their basic human right to sustainably use the natural resources on which our communities' livelihoods depend, and urging Ricky Gervais, Ed Sheeran, and others to stop undermining our globally recognized conservation efforts. Yeah, this is it's a complicated matter. It's so complicated, guys. This is so overarching and a little bit intense, to be fair. And there are good points being made on both sides of these arguments. Enough to make me waffle back and forth about this topic over and over again. I like the way that we're doing things in the U.S. I would like to see similar models adapted to where there's a conservation department that tends to and manages the land that these animals are living on. And like they were saying, describing the landscape not being exactly photogenic, but definitely good for hunting. So I get that. Oh yeah, I see Germania popped in, and I see yep, Maya's here, and Kat. Good to see you guys. Ian Davenport. Sorry if you popped in and I missed you. I'm sorry if I didn't say hi. Conservationists who caution against banning hunting do not pretend that hunting is an ideal solution. We simply recognize that it serves a valued purpose in places where no other mechanism for protection of habitat currently exists. Right, like I was saying. Capitalism is the problem with everything. Capitalism is the enemy of our species. Sorry, I'll lay off the politics. For most conservationists, a hunter's desire to kill an animal like an elephant remains baffling and repugnant. And I relate to that. It's repugnant to me too. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. Just I agree. We have to work within the system that we have, though. But utilitarian acceptance of trophy hunting is based on an understanding of the community's benefit that can derive from well-managed hunting, and the belief that even if such trophies might be objectionable, it represents a lesser evil than the catastrophic wildlife losses that would likely stem from premature bans. Indeed, some conservationists argue that a trophy hunting ban directly imperils biodiversity, while others have asked for a broadening of the debate. Shameful attempts have been made to impugn the motives of those voicing such concerns, with accusing fingers being pointed at those who have accepted funding from hunters, however small and however long ago. The same critics who claim hunting doesn't fund conservation then attack any conservation project partly funded by hunters. Ethic, value, and consequences. In truth, the ethical debate between those who favor a ban on trophy hunting and those who caution against a ban boils down to a debate between deontologists and consequentialist values. The deontologist argument holds that if an act, trophy hunting, is wrong, then it is bad regardless of any associated consequences. But this standard, shooting someone, would be considered wrong even if that person was a suicide bomber, and killing him saved innocent victims. The consequentialist argument holds that while an act may be bad in isolation, it may be the right thing to do if its consequences achieve a greater good. So, I am a consequentialist. And maybe. I'm also a pragmatist, though, so we need to find a system that works. And let's keep peeling down on the topic. An entropy fan has laid out some ideas here. Let me see what you have to say, entropy fan. I'm interested. Here's a well-balanced centrist position. We allow trophy hunting, but we hunt the rich folk who think hunting is a pastime and hobby instead. People who aren't hunting for food. When a rich hunter is killed, their estate is donated to the wildlife sanctuary and national parks across the world. Problem solved via a rational middle ground. So the problem there is not so much the issue. Again, that the hunters themselves, while you think low of them all you want. They're individuals who get off on killing powerful animals, or claiming to have killed powerful animals in the wild. Because a lot of them kill them in situations like you see in this meme here, which is gross. Just say that they killed them in the wild. But the fact that the countries where these hunts take place at, that the people who live there resent the wildlife if they're not making money off of it. So the problem here is capitalism, but it's because why preserve the land for these animals if we're not making any money off of them? Phototourism in a lot of these areas does not work. These areas are going to be developed if they can't make profit off of them in some way from their natural state. So trophy hunting is really the only option for a lot of these lands in order to preserve them. It's a terrible situation, but that's where we're at. The hunting industry today is far from perfect. It does not always support proper habitat protection, and it is often linked with financial corruption and other unethical behavior. That is true, and that does happen. Short leases and the incentive to shoot as many animals as possible within poorly managed quota systems can lead to targeting of animals whose death may have a negative impact on the local population or genetic diversity. and hunting does not always funnel significant revenue back to the local communities it is so often boasted to support. It also remains an almost exclusively white industry, at least in terms of the professional hunters. Where hunting can be replaced by other revenue generating models that equally support wildlife, ecosystems, integrity, and community development, those industries may be preferable. Yep. I know. Yeah, that's the problem too, is that a lot of people with no good intentions towards preserving these resources. It's like the oil industry, keep bilking people out of it by a shortage is a good thing for people trying to sell something. Something being rare is good. So, are they trying to preserve the populations of these animals? I don't think all of them are. I don't think many of them don't care. They're just taking advantage of these laws opening up to allow them to do this. But whether or not their revenue goes back into the communities, and whether or not they, as individuals, want to preserve these species, if we can keep them within the confines of laws and restrictions and regulations that do benefit that, if we can make sure that the funding goes back into the conservation efforts and such, in an optimal system this works. But people are going to try to work around it and get around it. There are trumps everywhere. However, so-called non-consumptive tourism has its own negative impacts. In the Masai Mara, poorly behaved guides have caused mass drownings of wildebeest at river crossings, and the crowding of cheetahs in tourist hotspots is linked to significant increased cub mortality. Phototourism also has a much larger carbon footprint than hunting, requires more water extraction, and often leads to the unregulated spread of networks of vehicle tracks. In many areas, a mixture of hunting and phototourism can generate more revenue and support more jobs. In the post-COVID era, Africa needs every paying visitor it can attract. We live in an imperfect world. Does hunting need reform? Absolutely. Could it be better regulated? Undoubtedly. Should hunters take more responsibility for demanding ethical practices across the industry? Again, yes. But will trophy hunting ban at this time be good for wildlife? On balance right now, I believe the answer is no. Alright, so we're going to stop right there because we are about 2 hours and 15 minutes, so just 15 minutes over. Ooh. Yeah, I think he was joking about the most dangerous game. All right, so that was live from this hive for Saturday, May 14th. I hope you all enjoyed hanging out with me today, day after Friday the 13th. Yeah, thank you again for showing up. Let's recap. We had Atlantis as our cryptic corner. We explored some blogs that were kind of boring, actually, so I probably will not be revisiting that, but we will definitely have to revisit Atlantis because there's a lot more to go over. Then we had Todd Wood on what is a kind, and that was an interesting endeavor. We had our river dolphins batting around anaconda, which was pretty cool to see. And then we had, of course, our main subject for the day, which was this trophy hunting incident. So thank you for joining me live from the hive, and we will see you next time. Please remember to be kind and take care.